The morning sun shone through the tall windows of the royal palace. King Edward of Westoria sat in his large chair, looking at the letter in his shaking hands. His time was running out. After ruling for 40 years, he needed to pass his crown to his oldest son. But there was a big problem. His 3 children had not spoken to each other for 5 years. Prince Thomas, Princess Amelia, and Prince Henry had all gone their separate ways after a big fight at their mother's funeral. The kingdom needed them to come together now more than ever. "Your Majesty, shall I send the royal messengers?" asked Harold, the king's most trusted helper. The king nodded slowly. "Yes. Tell them all to come home. The coronation will be in 1 month." Harold bowed and left the room. King Edward looked out the window at his kingdom. Dark clouds were gathering in the distance. He hoped it was not a bad sign. Far to the north, Prince Thomas stood on the deck of his warship. As the commander of the Royal Navy, he spent most of his time at sea. The salty wind blew through his dark hair as he watched his men practice their fighting skills. "Your Highness," called a voice. Thomas turned to see a small boat coming toward his ship. The royal messenger climbed aboard and bowed deeply. "A message from the king," the messenger said, holding out a letter with the royal seal. Thomas broke the seal and read quickly. His face grew serious. "Tell the men to turn the ship around," he ordered his captain. "We sail for the capital now." In the east, Princess Amelia sat at a long table surrounded by leaders from other lands. As the kingdom's top talker with other countries, she had built many friendships for Westoria. "If we join our armies, the northern raiders will not dare to attack," she was saying when the doors opened. A royal messenger walked in and bowed. "Princess, a message from your father." Amelia read the letter, her face showing no feelings. She stood up smoothly. "I must ask for a short break in our talks. I am called back to the capital." The foreign leaders whispered as she left the room. Everyone knew the royal family had problems. This sudden call must mean something big was happening. Deep in the western mountains, Prince Henry moved through the dark halls of the ancient library. Dust floated in the air as he pulled old books from the shelves. As the youngest child, he had turned to learning instead of fighting or talking with other kingdoms. The soft sound of footsteps made him look up. The royal messenger looked out of place among the dusty books. "Prince Henry, the king asks for your return." Henry took the letter and read it twice. "The coronation," he said quietly. "So it's time." He closed his books and began packing his things. The journey to the capital would take 3 days, even if he rode without stopping. In the busy streets of the capital, people talked about the news. The royal children were coming home at the same time. Many remembered the public fight between the siblings 5 years ago. "They hate each other," said an old woman selling bread in the market. "Prince Thomas thinks he should have full power when he becomes king. And Princess Amelia believes he will start wars with our neighbors," added a blacksmith. "Prince Henry just wants to be left alone with his books," said another. A royal guard walking by heard them talking. "The kingdom needs them to work together now," he said seriously. "Dark times are coming." The people looked up at the palace on the hill. Royal flags flew in the wind, calling the family home. But would they answer the call as a family or as enemies? As the sun set that evening, King Edward watched from his balcony as the first royal carriage arrived. Princess Amelia stepped out, her face showing no emotion. Hours later, Prince Henry rode through the gates on his tired horse. By midnight, the royal ships could be seen entering the harbor. Prince Thomas would arrive by morning. For the first time in 5 years, all 3 royal children would be under the same roof. The king knew that the future of the kingdom depended on what would happen next. Could his children put aside their old fights and stand together? The people of Westoria held their breath and waited. The next morning, the great hall of the palace was silent except for the sound of the large clock ticking on the wall. King Edward sat at the head of the long table. Princess Amelia sat on his right, her back straight and her eyes fixed on the door. Prince Henry sat on the king's left, playing with the pages of a small book he had brought. The doors swung open. Prince Thomas walked in, still wearing his Navy uniform. His boots made loud sounds on the stone floor. "Father," he said with a bow. He did not look at his brother or sister. "Sit down, Thomas," the king said. "We have much to talk about." Thomas took his seat across from his siblings. No one spoke for a long time. 5 years, the king finally said. 5 years since you three stood in the same room. And now look at you, strangers with the same blood. "I have been busy serving our kingdom at sea," Thomas said. "And I have been making peace with our neighbors," Amelia added quickly. "I have been learning the old ways to help our people," Henry said quietly. The king shook his head. "All good things, but a family divided cannot rule well." He pulled out a large golden key and unlocked a box on the table. From it, he took out the royal crown. "In 4 weeks, this will pass to you, Thomas. But I fear what will happen then." "I will rule well, father," Thomas said, sitting up taller. "You will try," the king said. "But there is danger coming that one person alone cannot fight." The siblings looked at each other with confusion. "What danger?" Amelia asked. The king's face grew dark with worry. "Our enemies are gathering. The kingdom of Darkshore has been watching us, waiting for me to grow weak. Their ships have been seen near our waters. Their spies walk our streets." Henry closed his book. Darkshore. "But they signed a peace paper 10 years ago." "Papers mean nothing to them," Thomas said sharply. "I have chased their ships from our waters many times. If you had told me, I could have talked with them," Amelia said, her voice rising. "Like you talked with the mountain people. They still raid our villages." Thomas shot back. "Stop," the king shouted, hitting the table with his hand. The room fell silent again. "This is exactly what Darkshore wants," he said more quietly. "They see you're fighting. They know that when I die, the kingdom will be weak because you cannot work together." A servant entered the room and whispered something to the king. His face grew even more serious. "Come with me," he said, standing up slowly with the help of his walking stick. The 3 siblings followed their father through the palace halls and up a winding staircase. They reached the highest tower, where the kingdom's watchman stood with a looking glass. "See for yourself," the king said. One by one, they looked through the glass. Far on the horizon, they could see dark ships. "Many ships. Darkshore's navy," Thomas whispered. "They are testing us," the king said, "seeing how we react. The coronation is our chance to show them, and everyone, that Westoria is strong." "How can we do that when we can barely speak to each other?" Henry asked. The king looked at each of his children. "You must find a way. For your mother's memory, for the kingdom. You must stand together at the coronation as one family, one power." He turned to Thomas. "You cannot rule with just strength." To Amelia, he said, "Words alone will not protect our people." And to Henry, "Knowledge without action helps no one." The siblings looked out at the enemy ships, then at each other. Old hurts and angry words still stood between them, but something else was there too. A small spark of the bond they once had. "We have 4 weeks, the king said. 4 weeks to become a family again. 4 weeks to save the kingdom." As they left the tower, a servant ran up to them. "Your Majesty, a Darkshore messenger has arrived. He brings a letter for the royal family." The siblings looked at each other. The test had begun sooner than they thought. The royal family gathered in the small meeting room. The Darkshore messenger stood before them, dressed all in black. He held out a sealed letter with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "From King Darius of Darkshore," he said, "a coronation gift of sorts." Thomas took the letter and broke the black seal. As he read, his face grew hard with anger. Without a word, he passed it to Amelia, who then gave it to Henry. Their father washed their faces carefully. "What does Darkshore want?" King Edward asked when all had read the letter. "They want to come to the coronation," Thomas said, his voice tight. King Darius himself wishes to attend with 50 of his men. 50 armed men in our palace during the coronation. Amelia shook her head. It's a trap. Henry nodded. They want to get inside our walls. The messenger smiled wider. My king offers friendship. Will you turn him away? King Edward looked at his children, then back to the messenger. Tell your king we will think about his kind offer. You may go. When the messenger left, Thomas hit the wall with his fist. We should tell them to stay away. No, Amelia said. That would be an insult. It could start a war. They already plan war. Thomas shouted. Henry, who had been quiet, finally spoke. What if we let them come? Thomas and Amelia stared at him like he was crazy. Hear me out, Henry said, opening his book. According to royal law, we can set the terms for visitors. We can tell them how many men they can bring, what weapons they can carry, where they can go in the palace. Amelia nodded slowly. We could control the situation. It's too dangerous, Thomas argued. A knock at the door stopped their talk. Harold entered with a worried look. Your Majesty, there's trouble in the city. People have heard about the Dark Shore ships. They're scared. Some are already leaving the capital. We cannot show fear, King Edward said. The coronation must go on as planned. The people need to see us, Amelia said. They need to know we're strong. For once, Thomas agreed with his sister. We should ride through the city together. Henry looked surprised. All of us, together. Yes, King Edward said, hope showing in his tired eyes. Show the people that the royal family stands united. An hour later, the royal family rode through the city streets on their horses. King Edward led the way, followed by Thomas, Amelia, and Henry side by side. Royal guards marched before and after them. People came out of their homes and shops to watch. At first, they were quiet, unsure what to think. Everyone knew about the fighting between the siblings. Everyone had taken sides. Look at them, one man whispered to his wife. They're actually together. But for how long? She asked. As the royal family reached the main square, they stopped to speak to the people. King Edward's voice was too weak to carry far, so Thomas stepped forward. People of Westoria, he called out in a strong voice. You have heard rumors. You have seen strange ships. Know this, Westoria is strong. The royal family. He paused and looked at his siblings. The royal family stands together. Amelia moved her horse forward. We face challenges, but we face them as one family, one kingdom. Henry joined them. Our enemies think we are weak because we have had our differences. They are wrong. The crowd began to cheer. It was a small cheer at first, then it grew louder. As they continued through the city, Thomas noticed something strange. Amelia was talking to him. Your Navy men, she said quietly. How many ships do we have ready? 15 battle ready. Why? I've made friends with the coastal tribes. They have small, fast boats. Together, we might match Darkshore's fleet. Thomas looked at his sister with new eyes. That could work. Henry rode closer. I've been studying Darkshore's battle plans from the last war. There are weaknesses we can use. For the first time in years, the siblings were talking about something other than their old fights. They were planning together. As the sun set, they returned to the palace. The Darkshore messenger waited at the gates, ready for their answer about the coronation invitation. Thomas looked at his siblings. They nodded. Tell King Darius. Thomas said to the messenger that the royal family of Westoria welcomes him to the coronation. With 20 men, not 50. And we look forward to showing him how united we are. The messenger's smile faded a little as he bowed and left. Inside the palace, King Edward watched his children with growing hope. The road ahead was still long, but today they had taken the first step together. 3 weeks before the coronation, strange things began to happen in the palace. A guard found a broken window in the east wing. Kitchen workers noticed food missing from the storage rooms. The king's helper, Harold, reported that someone had been in the royal library at night. "We have a spy in the palace," Thomas said during breakfast with his siblings. The three of them had started eating together each morning, though their talks were still careful and short. "Darkshore?" asked Amelia, putting down her cup. "Most likely," Thomas nodded. "We need to find them before the coronation." Henry looked up from his book. "I think I know how to catch them." That night, the three siblings met in the dark hallway outside the royal library. They had told no one of their plan, not even their father. If there was a spy, they couldn't risk anyone finding out. "Are you sure this will work?" Thomas whispered to Henry. "The spy has been coming to the library for 3 nights, Henry explained. "They're looking for something. I put out fake papers about the coronation ceremony on the main desk. If they take them, we'll know." "And then what?" Amelia asked. Thomas patted the sword at his side. "Then we catch them." They waited in the shadows for hours. The palace grew quiet as everyone went to sleep. Just when they were getting tired, they heard soft footsteps coming down the hall. A figure in a dark cloak slipped into the library. The siblings waited, hardly breathing. Minutes passed. Then the figure came out, holding papers. "Now," Thomas whispered. The three rushed forward. The spy saw them and ran. Thomas chased after them, but the spy was fast. They turned a corner and disappeared. "Where did they go?" Thomas said, out of breath. Henry pointed to a small door. "The servants' stairs." They raced down the narrow stairway. At the bottom, they heard a noise from the kitchen. Slowly, they crept toward the sound. In the large kitchen, they found a young woman. She was not much older than Henry. She held a knife and looked ready to fight. "Stop," Thomas said, drawing his sword. "You're caught." "Who are you?" Amelia asked. "Why are you spying?" The woman said nothing. Her eyes moved between them, looking for a way to escape. "Wait," Henry said, stepping closer. "I know her. She works in the kitchen. She started a few weeks ago." "A Darkshore spy," Thomas said. But Henry shook his head. "I don't think so. Look at her clothes under the cloak. That's not a Darkshore style." The woman finally spoke. "I'm not from Darkshore. I hate them as much as you do." "Then why are you stealing royal papers?" Thomas demanded. "To protect the king," she said. "There's a plot against your family. I was trying to find out more about it." The siblings looked at each other, unsure whether to believe her. "Why should we trust you?" Amelia asked. The woman lowered her knife. "My name is Lyra. I'm from the eastern villages. Darkshore soldiers burned my home last year. I came here to warn the royal family." "Why not just tell us?" Thomas asked, still not trusting her. "Would you have believed me?" "A kitchen girl?" Lyra asked. "I needed proof." Henry stepped forward. "Show us what you found." Lyra pulled out the papers she had taken, plus others she had collected. They showed plans for the coronation, but also notes about palace guards, their positions, and shift changes. "Someone in the palace is helping Darkshore," she explained. "Someone close to the royal family." The siblings looked at the papers, then at each other. If Lyra was telling the truth, they had a bigger problem than they thought. "We need to tell Father," Amelia said. "No," Thomas surprised them by saying. "Not yet. If someone close to him is a traitor, it could be dangerous. We need to find out who it is first." For once, all three siblings agreed. They had a new mission: find the real spy before the coronation. "You'll help us?" Henry asked Lyra. She nodded. "That's why I came here." As they made plans, the siblings realized something important had changed. For the first time in years, they were working together, trusting each other. Their fight against a common enemy was bringing them closer than they had been since their mother died. Outside the palace windows, the moon shone down on the capital city. 3 weeks until the coronation. 3 weeks to find a traitor. And 3 weeks for a broken family to become whole again. 2 weeks before the coronation, the palace was busy with preparations. Workers hung colorful flags and cleaned every corner. Important people from other kingdoms began to arrive. Through it all, the royal siblings watched everyone carefully, looking for the traitor. "We need to make a list of who might be helping Darkshore," Thomas said. The siblings and Lyra met in Henry's room, which was filled with books and maps. "It must be someone with power," Amelia said. "Someone who can move freely in the palace." Henry nodded. "Someone who knows our family well." They made a list of people close to the king. His advisors, the palace guards, even old friends. It was hard to think that any of these people might want to hurt the royal family. "What about Harold?" Lyra suggested. "The king's helper." Thomas shook his head. "Never. Harold has served our family for 30 years. He loved our mother like a sister. We need proof before we blame anyone," Amelia said. Henry had a plan. "We should watch the people on our list. See if they do anything strange." For the next few days, the siblings took turns following the people they didn't trust. They checked rooms after meetings. They listened at doors. But they found nothing. Meanwhile, King Edward grew weaker. He spent most days in bed, saving his strength for the coronation. The royal doctor looked worried when he left the king's room. "Father needs to see us working together," Amelia said one evening. "It will help him feel better." The next morning, the siblings visited their father together. They talked about the coronation plans, careful not to mention their search for the traitor. The king seemed happier than he had been in weeks. "You three remind me of when you were children," he said with a smile. "Always together, always planning something." As they left the king's room, Harold approached them. "Your Highnesses, the Darkshore ships have moved closer to our harbor. The captain of the guard wants to speak with Prince Thomas." Thomas went to meet the captain. What he learned was not good. There were now 30 Darkshore ships, too many for Westoria to fight alone. That night, as they met again in Henry's room, Thomas shared the bad news. "We need help from our allies," Amelia said. "I can send messages to the friendly kingdoms." "There's no time," Thomas argued. "The coronation is in 10 days. "What about the old tunnels?" Henry suddenly asked. Thomas and Amelia looked confused. Henry pulled out an old map of the palace. "There are secret tunnels under the palace," he explained, "built hundreds of years ago in case the royal family needed to escape. One leads to the harbor." "How does this help us?" Thomas asked. "If Darkshore attacks during the coronation, we can move people to safety," Henry said. "And we can bring in extra guards without anyone seeing." Amelia smiled. "Henry, that's brilliant." For the first time since they were children, the three siblings smiled at each other with real warmth. But their happy moment didn't last long. The door burst open. Harold stood there, his face pale. "Your Highnesses, come quickly. The king has collapsed." They rushed to their father's room. The royal doctor was already there, giving the king medicine. King Edward lay in his bed, looking smaller and older than ever. "What happened?" Thomas demanded. "Poison," the doctor said quietly. "In his evening tea." The siblings looked at each other in shock. The traitor had made their move. "Who brought his tea?" Amelia asked, her voice shaking. The doctor pointed to the corner of the room. There stood Lyra, her face white with fear. "The kitchen girl," he said. "She brought it herself." Guards grabbed Lyra before she could run. "No," she cried. "I didn't do it. I would never." The siblings didn't know what to believe. Had they trusted the wrong person? Was Lyra the traitor all along? As guards took Lyra away, King Edward opened his eyes. "My children," he whispered, "stay together. Trust each other." With those words, he fell into a deep sleep. The doctor wasn't sure if he would wake again. The coronation was now just days away. The king was between life and death, and the siblings had to decide. Was Lyra guilty, or was the real traitor still out there, waiting to strike again? The palace was quiet after the king was poisoned. Guards stood at every door. No one was allowed to enter or leave without permission. The coronation was only 1 week away, but everyone wondered if it would still happen. In the prison tower, Lyra sat alone in a small room. She had cried until no more tears would come. The royal siblings watched her through a small window in the door. Why would she poison father? Amelia asked quietly. It doesn't make sense. She got close to us, Thomas said, his voice hard. She made us trust her. That was her plan all along. Henry wasn't so sure. But she helped us look for the traitor. Why would she do that if she was working for Darkshore? Thomas turned away from the window. We need to focus on father now. The doctor says he might wake up soon. As they walked back to the king's room, a messenger ran up to them. Your Highnesses, King Darius of Darkshore has arrived early with his men. They're at the city gates right now. The siblings looked at each other in alarm. The coronation was still a week away. Why was Darkshore here so early? Don't let them in the city yet, Thomas ordered. Tell them we will meet them tomorrow. But Prince Thomas, the messenger said, they say they've come to pay respects to the king. They've heard he is sick. That worried the siblings even more. How did Darkshore know about the poisoning so quickly? Someone told them, Amelia said when they were alone. The real traitor is still free. That night, while Thomas and Amelia met with the royal advisors to discuss what to do about King Darius, Henry went back to the prison tower. He found Lyra sitting on the floor, drawing patterns in the dust. Did you poison my father? Henry asked through the small window. Lyra looked up, her eyes red from crying. No, I loved your father. Everyone in the kitchen did. He was always kind to us. Then who did it? Henry asked. I don't know, she said. But I have an idea. The day before, I saw Harold talking to a stranger near the kitchen garden. They were arguing about something. When they saw me, they stopped talking. Henry's heart beat faster. Harold, the king's most trusted helper. It couldn't be. Why didn't you tell us before? He asked. Would you have believed me? Lyra asked. Harold has been with your family forever. I'm just a kitchen girl. Henry left the tower with a heavy heart. He needed to tell his siblings, but he had no proof. And accusing Harold was serious. If he was wrong, it could cause more problems. When he returned to the palace, he found Thomas and Amelia in the king's room. The king was awake, but very weak. Father, Henry said, kneeling by the bed, I'm glad you're awake. The king's eyes were clear despite his weakness. My children, he said softly. The doctor says I was poisoned. We will find who did this, Thomas promised. Darkshore is at our gates, Amelia told her father. King Darius came early. The king closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, he looked at each of his children. Listen carefully, he said. There isn't much time. The old box in my private room. The one with the royal seal. Inside is something you need to see. Before they could ask more, the door opened. Harold walked in with a cup. Your Majesty, the doctor sent medicine for your pain. Henry watched Harold carefully. Was there anything strange about him? Anything that showed he might be a traitor? Harold caught Henry looking at him and raised an eyebrow. Is something wrong, Prince Henry? No, Henry said quickly. Thank you for helping our father. After Harold left, Henry told his siblings about what Lyra had seen. Thomas didn't want to believe it, but Amelia was more open to the idea. We need to check father's private box, she said. That might give us answers. As they left the king's room, they didn't notice Harold watching them from the shadows, a small smile on his face. The game was not over yet. The king's private room was small and simple. It had a bed, a desk, and many pictures of the royal family from happier times. The siblings had rarely come here. This was where their father went when he wanted to be alone with his thoughts. Thomas closed the door behind them. The box must be here somewhere, he said. They began to look around the room. Amelia checked the desk drawers. Henry looked under the bed. Thomas searched the shelves. Here, Amelia said after a few minutes. She pulled out a wooden box from the bottom drawer of the desk. It had the royal seal, a lion and an eagle, carved into the top. "It's locked," Thomas said, trying to open it. Henry thought for a moment. The key. Where would Father keep the key? They looked around the room again. Then Amelia had an idea. She went to a picture on the wall, one of their mother on her wedding day. Behind it was a small hole in the wall. Inside was a golden key. "How did you know?" Thomas asked with surprise. Amelia smiled a little. "Mother once told me that's where she kept her special things. I thought Father might do the same." The key fit perfectly. The box opened with a soft click. Inside were papers, letters, and a small book with a leather cover. "What is all this?" Henry asked. Thomas picked up the top paper. His face turned white as he read it. "This is from King Darius," he said. "Written 3 months ago." "What does it say?" Amelia asked. Thomas read it aloud. "Dear Edward, I write to warn you. There are people in your court who wish you harm. My spies have heard of a plot against your life. Be careful who you trust, old friend. Even those closest to you may have changed." The siblings looked at each other in shock. King Darius was warning their father, but Darkshore was their enemy, wasn't it? Henry picked up the small book. It was their father's private diary. He opened it to the last pages that had writing. "Listen to this," he said. "Harold has been acting strange. He asks too many questions about the coronation, about who will be there, where people will sit, things he never cared about before. I fear my old friend is not himself anymore." The pieces started to fit together. Harold, who had served the king for 30 years, had changed. But why? At the bottom of the box was one more letter. This one was in their father's handwriting, but it was never sent. It was addressed to King Darius. "My dear friend Darius," Amelia read, "thank you for your warning. I believe you are right. Something has changed in my court. Harold is not the man I knew. I have seen him with strangers at night. I have caught him reading private papers. I think someone has turned him against me, perhaps with threats or promises. I will be careful. The children must work together now. They are stronger together than apart. If anything happens to me, please help them see the truth." Father and King Darius were friends. Thomas couldn't believe it. "All this time, we thought Darkshore was our enemy." "We were wrong," Henry said. "The real enemy is closer. It's Harold." Just then, they heard a sound at the door. Someone was trying to open it. Thomas had locked it when they came in, but now the handle was turning slowly. "Quick," Thomas whispered. "Put everything back." They closed the box and hid it in the drawer. Amelia put the key back behind the picture. They stood up just as the door opened. Harold stood there, his face calm as always. "Your Highnesses," he said, "I've been looking for you. King Darius has sent another message. He wishes to meet with you tonight, outside the city walls." "Thank you, Harold," Thomas said, trying to sound normal. "Tell him we will be there." Harold bowed and left. The siblings waited until his footsteps faded away. "We can't trust him," Amelia whispered. "But we need to know what he's planning," Henry said. "And we need to talk to King Darius," Thomas added. "Tonight we'll find out the truth." The siblings left the room together, more united than ever. They had a dangerous plan, but for the first time, they truly trusted each other. The coronation was only 5 days away. They needed to catch the real traitor before it was too late. The night was cold and foggy as the royal siblings rode out of the city. They wore dark cloaks to hide who they were. No guards came with them. This meeting had to be secret. "Do you think it's a trap?" Amelia asked as they rode through the forest path. "Maybe," Thomas said, "but we need to know the truth about King Darius and Harold." "I brought these, just in case," Henry said, showing small knives hidden in his sleeves. Thomas looked at his younger brother with new respect. Henry had always seemed so quiet, only caring about books. Now Thomas saw that Henry had his own kind of strength. They reached a small clearing in the forest. A single tent stood there with torches around it. Guards in black uniforms, dark shore soldiers, watched the area. "That's King Darius's tent," Amelia whispered. "I recognize the flag." They got off their horses and walked toward the tent. The dark shore guards let them pass after checking they had no big weapons. Inside the tent was a tall man with gray hair and a short beard. He wore simple clothes, not what you would expect from a king. "Prince Thomas, Princess Amelia, Prince Henry," he said with a bow. "Thank you for coming. I am Darius." "Why did you want to meet us?" Thomas asked directly. "Our kingdoms are enemies." King Darius shook his head. "No, young prince. Our kingdoms were never true enemies. Your father and I were friends for many years. But someone worked hard to make us look like enemies." "Harold," Henry said. "Yes," King Darius nodded. "Harold was a good man once, but 5 years ago, something changed. When our mother died," Amelia said quietly. "Exactly," King Darius said. "After that, Harold began working with a group that wants to control both our kingdoms. They call themselves the Black Hand." "What do they want?" Thomas asked. "Power," King Darius said simply. "They saw a chance when your family broke apart after your mother's death. They used Harold to keep you fighting with each other. They want a weak king who they can control." The siblings thought about how Harold had always seemed to make their fights worse, carrying harsh messages between them that made them angrier at each other. "But why come to the coronation?" Henry asked. "What is Harold planning?" "The Black Hand wants to stop Thomas from becoming king," King Darius explained. "They plan to kill your father during the ceremony, then blame me for it. That would start a war between our kingdoms, and in the confusion, they would take control." "We need to stop Harold," Thomas said, standing up. King Darius held up his hand. "Be careful. Harold is not working alone. There are others in your palace who help him." "Who?" Amelia asked. "I don't know all of them," the king admitted, "but I do know they have Lyra." "Lyra," Henry said with surprise. "Where is she?" "My spies say she's being held in the old tower, not the prison where you think she is. The woman in the prison is someone else who looks like her." The siblings were shocked. They had been tricked again. "We need to save her," Henry said. "She might know who else is working with Harold. And we need to protect father," Amelia added. Thomas looked at King Darius. "Will you help us?" The old king smiled. "That's why I'm here early. My men are ready when you need them." As they left the tent, a plan began to form. The coronation was just 4 days away. They would need to work together perfectly to save their father, their kingdom, and perhaps make peace with Darkshore at last. They rode back to the city with new hope. But as they approached the palace gates, they saw something that made their hearts stop. Royal guards were running everywhere. Bells were ringing in alarm. "What's happening?" Thomas asked a guard at the gate. The guard's face was pale with fear. "The king is gone, Your Highness. Someone took him from his bed. And Harold is missing too." The real battle had begun. The day of the coronation arrived with golden sunshine and blue skies. Flags flew from every building in the capital. People filled the streets, dressed in their best clothes. But whispers spread through the crowds. "The king is missing. Will there still be a coronation? What will happen to our kingdom?" Inside the palace, the royal siblings worked quickly. They had spent 3 days searching for their father with no success. Now they had a new plan. "The coronation must go on," Thomas told the royal advisors. "The people need to see that the kingdom is strong." "But Your Highness," one old advisor said, "we cannot have a coronation without the king." "We will find our father," Amelia promised. "But today we must show everyone that Westoria stands united." The siblings had been busy. Henry and some trusted guards had found the real Lyra in the old tower, just as King Darius had said. She told them everything she knew about Harold and the Black Hand. Harold isn't the leader, she had explained. He takes orders from someone else, someone with even more power. Who? They had asked. I don't know their name, Lyra said, but Harold always meets them in the room behind the throne. Now, as servants prepared the great hall for the coronation, the siblings made their final plans. We know they will make their move during the ceremony, Thomas said. That's when we'll catch them. Henry nodded. King Darius's men are ready. They're hiding in the old tunnels under the palace. And I've spoken to the palace guards we can trust, Amelia added. They'll help us when the time comes. The bells began to ring, calling everyone to the coronation. The siblings looked at each other. This was the moment they had prepared for. Together, Thomas asked, holding out his hands. Together, his brother and sister answered, taking his hands. The great hall was filled with people when the royal siblings entered. Everyone stood as they walked down the long aisle. Thomas in the middle, Amelia on his right, Henry on his left. Their faces were calm, but their eyes watched everyone carefully. At the front of the hall stood the royal throne and a small table with the crown. The old advisor who would put the crown on Thomas's head waited nervously. The ceremony began. Thomas knelt before the throne as the advisor spoke the ancient words. Amelia and Henry stood beside him, part of the ceremony for the first time in the kingdom's history. Just as the advisor picked up the crown, there was a loud noise. The doors at the back of the hall burst open. Harold walked in, pulling the weak king with him. Behind them came more men with swords. Stop the ceremony, Harold shouted. This is not the true king. The crowd gasped. The king looked very ill, barely able to stand. The royal children have turned against their father, Harold continued. They work with Darkshore to take the throne. Thomas stood up slowly. That's not true, Harold. We know who you really work for. We know about the Black Hand. Harold's face changed. You know nothing, he hissed. We know everything, Amelia said, including where you've been hiding our father these past 3 days. And we know who gives you orders, Henry added, turning to look at the old advisor standing by the crown. The advisor's face turned white. For a moment, no one moved. Then the advisor grabbed the crown and ran toward a side door. Now, Thomas shouted. Guards appeared from all doors. King Darius's men rushed in from hidden passages. The Black Hand fighters were surprised and quickly surrounded. Henry ran to his father and helped him to a chair. Amelia directed the guards to capture Harold. Thomas chased after the advisor. In a small room behind the throne, Thomas cornered the advisor. It's over, he said. Give back the crown. The advisor looked at the crown in his hands, then at Thomas. You were supposed to fight each other, he said bitterly. The royal family was supposed to fall apart. You were wrong about us, Thomas said. We are stronger together. When Thomas returned to the great hall with the crown, he found his father sitting in the throne, looking tired but alive. Amelia and Henry stood beside him. The hall was quiet as Thomas walked toward them. The Black Hand is defeated, he announced. Their leaders will face justice. King Edward smiled at his children. I am proud of you, he said. You saved our kingdom by working together. He took the crown from Thomas and held it up for everyone to see. Today, we will have a coronation like no other in our history. The king placed the crown on Thomas's head, but then he did something unexpected. He took off his royal ring and gave it to Amelia. From around his neck, he removed the royal medallion and placed it over Henry's head. From this day forward, the king declared, Westoria will be ruled not by one, but by 3, each with their own strengths, but united as one royal family. The crowd cheered as the 3 siblings stood together before their people. King Darius came forward and bowed to them. Darkshore offers friendship and peace to the new rulers of Westoria, he said. The royal family had faced their greatest test and passed it together. The kingdom would now enter a new age of peace and unity, led by a family that had learned the true meaning of strength.